Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2022. That brings us to a title which they have released, the Criterion Collection has released with a 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition of a title that currently exists at spine number 920. And this is a work from the year 1999. And the name of the filmmaker is Sofia Coppola. The name of the work is The Virgin Suicides. This is the work from the year 1999. And it is from the writer-director Sofia Coppola, the great Sofia Coppola. And she wrote it for the screen based upon the work by Jeffrey Eugenides. And among its great cast, we have people like James Woods and Kathleen Turner and Josh Hartnett and Kirsten Dunst and others. This is, of course, the haunting, the beautiful, the dreamlike, ethereal film that is so emotionally resonant, and it really packs a lot in terms of its impact in a lot of ways, and captures a spirit, a sense, an excitement in the air, an environment, a feeling of a time long gone. It is this film, The Virgin Suicides. Wow, what a film this is, right? And if we were to focus on the plot, I think we can notice, or we are drawn to the story of this family, the Lisbon family, and we have the matriarch and patriarch, the mother and father, and the daughters, the Lisbon sisters, right? And then the parents are portrayed by Kathleen Turner and James Woods, respectively, living in this suburban area. This is Michigan, I understand, in the early 1970s, suburban America. And we also get a sense of their lives, their entanglements, their issues living in this environment, their relationships with each other, among each other, with their friends in and around the community, certain boys that are also part of the narrative propulsion of this film, and school life and social life and family life and community life of this family, the Lisbon family, and specifically perhaps the Lisbon sisters. And I mention that too because part of the intriguing nature of the story structure of this film, right, is the way in which the events are told. And we understand that there is a voiceover narration from a male voice, and it sounds like it is an older person talking about times now past. So talking about the past, which means that these scenes of the Lisbon sisters in the 1970s suburban America appear to be scenes of the past, and people, for instance, this narrator, but others are indeed looking back on the past with some kind of air of reflection, contemplation, reminiscing, also maybe inquiry, inquisitiveness, trying to put together the pieces. Maybe now in the present people are figuring out what happened and trying to figure out what happened, especially in the past when certain events happened, maybe with lightning speed and with a sense of fullness, but also with a sense of confusion and lack of awareness. Why did these things happen the way they happened? And so in this nature of the narration of present looking back onto the past, We also are in the mode of a type of investigative nature. Why are these things that we will see transpire and act themselves out in the film? Because the film primarily is showing us this 1970s locale and setting, and indeed scenario and situations and stories. Why are these things that we are seeing or witnessing happening? And whether we as viewers can get answers to those questions or not. Now, that is part of the way in which we as viewers engage with this film, The Virgin Suicides. And it's my roundabout way of saying, too, that while this film is indeed about the family and members of the family, for example, one of the sisters, Lux, Lisbon, who is portrayed with a great presence and an iconic quality, a classic iconic quality by Kirsten Dunst. Why do certain events happen to her the way they do? And these events, again, unfold in a way that is very much part of the daily life of suburban America and American living. And that means the way in which, for instance, Lux, as a character, is interacting with her other sisters, how she is experiencing her own feelings of, say, growth and adolescence into adulthood. And that could mean, of course, how she is feeling about herself and her own identity vis-a-vis how she relates to other people in school. And that's where a character like Trip, the Josh Hartnett character, comes into play, Trip Fontaine, and the relationship that that may or may not develop between, say, Lux and Trip, and what that means for not just the identity and the way that Trip sees himself in the world around him, but also how Lux sees herself in the world around her, and what are the consequences of that, and what does that mean in terms of her own emotional development, her emotional growth and physical development and physical growth, and what will the ultimate consequences be for her and also potentially for other members of her family. So that in itself is a type of crystallization of how the story works. And also at the same time, it serves as a metaphor for how other elements of the story map themselves out. However, what is so brilliant about this film, and there are many brilliant points about the Virgin Suicides and how it's told, but what's so brilliant about, for instance, taking the Lux story as an example, again in very general terms, we can say too that while there are moments of story that can be said to be very much concretely about plot development A seems to lead to plot development B seems to lead to plot development C, at the same time there is a lot of room for a type of haze and a fog that is purposely applied between such plot points A, B, and C as an example. And what I mean by this, that application, the purposeful application of fog and haziness and ambiguity gives us the room as viewers to create our own interpretations as to what might be the psychological bases for the things happening the way they do and the decisions that certain characters make. We are not necessarily in the know as to why specifically, say, a character does what he or she might do. We see the end result oftentimes, but why does it happen? We can get a sense of it. We might intuit, we might guess, but we're not always sure. And therein lies the almost the mysterious nature of this film in a purposefully applied way. And that too is one of the, I think, hypnotic parts of this film. We watch and we see and we think we might know why things are going on, but the more maybe we contemplate and think about it as viewers, the more one realizes perhaps that we really don't know what is going on and why things are happening the way they do. And that is one of the, I think, the great strengths of this film, The Virgin Suicides, is that it stands in this position of showing us something, but also withholding information or keeping things hidden, or perhaps presenting things as they are. And indeed, this idea of a malaise, this idea of a dissatisfaction, this idea of not quite being in sync with the world around one. Maybe it has nothing to do, say, with a specific point of drama or melodrama, a specific plot point per se, but maybe it is more of an innate psychological state. Maybe it's something to do with just who we are or who these people are. We're not quite sure, and therein this lies the mystery quality. But we as viewers want to know because, again, the story structure is such that the narrator is in the position of wanting to know, wanting to figure out why things happened, what happened to the Lisbon sisters, why things happened the way they did, trying to piece together some kind of semblance of a puzzle, maybe getting a sense as to an answer that might be satisfactory to those people who are asking the questions, but maybe in the end it's not quite there. But that is the great strength of the Virgin Suicides, one of many great strengths, I would say. And it maintains that beautiful, ethereal, natural, almost, and I mean this in a a positive way, a feeling of weightlessness, like floating through time and space. But that floating through time and space has at the same time a sense of tranquility and peace, but also inherent in that is a sense of the unknown, a risk, a danger, something that is not quite right. Maybe it's not quite fitting in exactly. Maybe a perfect type of idyllic course of action or course of existence might be totally cutting oneself off from the community, or it might be trying to figure out a hybrid. Who knows? Who knows? But in any event, there is this this nuanced sense of tranquil and calm and dream, but also something of the mysteriously dangerous or potentially dangerous undercurrent that is underway here. Not quite sure how it figures in, but that not being sure of things is one of the, I would say, the great qualities of this film, The Virgin Suicides, while maintaining our hold, or maintaining a hold on our say, attention, making us want to know. We might not always know everything. We might see everything. We might see what happens, but we might not always know why. But this is part of the challenge, and it's also part of the experience of watching and experiencing this story, The Virgin Suicides. And it is presented in this, as I say, ethereal or weightlessness-like way, floating through the air. And you get that with the sense of the camera movement, the gliding, the way that characters move in and out of spaces. And it's also done in a playful way, in a type of three-dimensional or four-dimensional way. And it's done in a way that is playing with form, playing with style, with sometimes quick cuts and edits and movements of camera that in a very lovely stylistic design also call attention to the craft of cinema itself. And you can tell that Sofia Coppola and company are really in command of telling the story in the way and in their terms. And they're also aided and guided by the soundscape, the soundtrack. We have maybe a double layer, triple layer of sounds going on. Of course, the sounds of the environment itself, again, to reflect the early to mid 1970s decor and feel and atmosphere. It's all there. But also we have the use of the music, the musical choices, the song choices. You know, I mentioned it before in passing, but I'll say it again. You know, I have these two soundtrack albums from The Virgin Suicides. One being the music, the song choices that were used for many points of the soundtrack, and that's one of the things. The songs that are used. Now, this is one of the great strengths, and it's also very reflective. Also, in many ways, quite eclectic. In a beautiful, beautiful way. And the soundtrack is indeed one of the points that we will talk about when we talk about the supplements here. But that's one. It evokes the time period. It shows this 70s period. It also has a way of being a type of Greek chorus element, in that the lyric of these songs might speak to the events that we see as they play themselves out. And the various turns of plot, turns of events that we see when the songs kick in. So whether it compares or contrasts or provides a type of counterpoint. In any event, the song choices are genius. But then there's another layer of the music that is equally of a genius stature, and that is the use of the original motion picture soundtrack music provided by Air. And we have this maybe somewhat very creative, almost quirky use, almost quite witty or sardonic, perhaps, or a use of chromatic chords and the interesting application of instrumentation, as well as the giving us a guide of through the air and time and space, and reminding us that everything seems to be at once part of the moment and then it disappears like that. And there is a sense of a moody, slow, and methodical type of morose sadness that is tiptoeing through the atmosphere in the air. And I think that is the great way that the music serves as a type of metaphor for this film, The Virgin Suicide. It's like the sad, morose thing in the air is just tiptoeing through. And this is the way in which this figure is guiding us through the story, The Virgin Suicide, the landscape of the Virgin Suicides. And again, it's embodied by playground love. And we'll talk a little bit more about playground love when we get to the supplements here. But ultimately, The Virgin Suicides is a film that is it has its sources of entertainment. There are moments of comedy. There are moments in which we see, for instance, I mentioned the Trip character. There are moments where we see his effect on certain members of the community around him, and it's played for laughs. I think it's played for comic entertainment value, and that's true for other aspects of the film as well. But there are also moments of wit, sardonic wit. There are also moments of deep, profound sadness. And there's also moments of a type of ethereal, air-like beauty. There's also moments of the mystery and the unknown. There's also moments of, again, that sadness that slowly creeps through the void and leaves us left wondering what is going on and what is to come. What is it we have seen? Do we really understand what it is we have seen? Or perhaps we are left wondering, we really don't understand everything. And that might be the point when we talk about this work. So all these elements come together to form the powerful, powerful work that is The Virgin Suicides. The Criterion Collection has released or re-released this film, The Virgin Suicides, at spine number 920 for purposes of this 4K UHD Blu-ray combo release. And I say re-released because, as we know, this already exists, again, at spine number 920, with this Blu-ray edition that was from the year 2018, yes. But now we have the virtually identical release, except for the added option of the 4K UHD format for purposes of viewing the film. And so therefore, for this new release, we have two discs, one for the Blu-ray and one for the 4K UHD in this plastic packaging layering system, and the discs don't touch. And this is a packaging, plastic packaging that is, or casing that is often employed by Criterion with other 4K UHD offerings, as we know. And just to further the point, let me say that the insert, and I've taken the liberty of removing this, says about the transfer. It says that The Virgin Suicides is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1.66 to 1, approved by director Sofia Coppola. This digital transfer was created in 4K resolution from the 35mm original camera negative. The original 5.1 surround soundtrack was remastered from the 35mm Dolby SR magnetic track. On the 4K Ultra HD disc, this feature is presented in HDR high dynamic range to preserve the P3 wide color gamut of the theatrical color space. On the Blu-ray, it is presented in high definition SDR standard dynamic range. And so based upon that description, and also based upon the description as it's found in the earlier 2018 Blu-ray only release, which I have right here, it appears that, at least to my eye and to my ear, my understanding is that it's being offered on the same materials, the same transfer materials that we saw in the earlier release. And so, but for purposes of this new release, we have the 4K Ultra HD disc presented in HDR to preserve the P3 wide color gamut of the theatrical color space. Now that sounds very impressive to me, and I am indeed not in any way, and I admit I'm not in any way technically proficient when it comes to these specific details of presentation and HDR and the like, and the specific technical specifications and the results of that. But what I can say is that, yes, to my eyes and to my ears, for instance, the Blu-ray that we have in this combo pack appears to be the same as that which we had seen in the earlier Blu-ray release. And then when we get to the 4K UHD disc, in terms of the sights and the sounds, it looks like there isn't any, say, drastic change from my vantage point between Blu-ray and the 4K UHD for purposes of, say, transfer quality and my own, say, consumption abilities. However, that being said, there is a way in which it does, maybe it's a psychological effect, I'm not sure, but I'm satisfied very much with the Blu-ray, but I am very, very satisfied with how the 4K UHD made its effect on me. I mean, it felt like the colors were there, it felt like the sound was all enveloping, and indeed, as I mentioned, sound is very key when we're talking about this film, The Virgin Suicides. And so, to my eyes and to my ears, I have no complaints when it comes to either the 4K UHD option or the Blu-ray option, which was already there from the earlier release offering from Criterion from some years back. So, all in all, it is a great re-release, and it's a great reminder of this film. And again, it's a very fascinating and indeed quite satisfying application from the consumer point of view, my point of view, quite satisfying application of the 4K technology as in the hands of Criterion. So here we have yet another example of Criterion in the 4K space with the Virgin Suicides release. And much like the other 4K UHD Blu-ray combo editions from the Criterion collection, so as we say, we have two discs. One is the 4K disc and the other is the Blu-ray disc. And so we have the film in the 4K format on the 4K disc and the film also in the Blu-ray format on the Blu-ray disc. However, the supplements would be found on the Blu-ray disc only. And indeed, when we talk about the supplements, we had already seen these supplements in the prior release, but I haven't spoken about this release on this channel, the YouTube channel, before. So this is, I think, a great opportunity to talk about what we can find on the Blu-ray, whether it's in this release or the new release, with regard to the Criterion release of the Virgin Suicide. So what do we find, what can we find with regard to these supplements? They're really great. First is from 2018. This is approximately 26 minutes. It is called Revisiting the Virgin Suicides, and this is a discussion with Sofia Coppola and others are talking about, for instance, Sofia Coppola is talking about her inspiration for wanting to make this film, finding the book, discovering the book, the Jeffrey Eugenides work, and also trying to get the film made, and what were the circumstances of that. And maybe it wasn't quite sure, it wasn't quite in the bag, in a manner of speaking, but she was very persistent, and she was very much confident, or not confident per se, but maybe she very much was so in tune with the work that she tried to develop it into a screenplay on her own, again, not knowing whether it could be made by her or not, but still. And that's quite a risky proposition, I understand, from an artist's standpoint, because writing a screenplay, I understand, takes a great deal of time and energy. And so if you write a screenplay but it ends up not getting made, that runs a risk of how, the time that was spent and the cost that was spent, etc. But as fate would have it, as circumstances would have it, she would ultimately be able, yes, to create this work for the screen. And it is, of course, it's notable for being the feature debut of Sofia Coppola. But in this discussion of Revisiting the Virgin Suicides, we are reminded that she had also made a short film called Lick the Star. And indeed, we'll get the short film later on in the supplements, which is a really great one. It's almost like a mirror image of the types of feelings and notes and counterpoints that we might get later in the Virgin Suicides, mainly about school life and the inner workings of school life and the mystery surrounding the various machinations and alliances and friendships and betrayals and cliques and all this that has to do with school life. So Lick the Star seems to be providing its own very powerful and quite quirky and a very clever story point, which again we will talk about when we get to that supplement because it's included as a supplement, while also seemingly maybe in a very artistic fashion providing a sense of laying the foundation work that we will see for the Virgin Suicides, because we also see, yes, how the Virgin Suicides is, among other things, about school life, about the community, how the girls fit in or not fit in, and how people perceive them, and the perceptions go not just to school life and the immediate community, but also in the outer levels and media, and how they perceive them, and whether those perceptions are indeed on point or complete misrepresentations. This is again, it's all in the artistic lifeblood of Sofia Coppola from the very get-go. And so we understand that, yes, this material, the Virgin Suicides, the Jeffrey Eugenides work, does have a close-knit connection with Sofia Coppola and what it is she ended up doing, which is, as I say, utterly, utterly brilliant. And the idea, too, of the look and capturing this sense of Americana, but also capturing the nuances and the complexities of this. And she gives an example of, for instance, Lux, the Kirsten Dunst character, and talking about how this is, quote unquote, maybe applying the sense of the, quote unquote, all American blonde on the one hand, but the layers are show and display a great deal of sensitivity and complexity. It's not just about image. I mean, image is very important in this film, of course, and image is very powerful. And there's nothing inherently wrong about focusing in on the image. I mean, there are sometimes negative connotations associated with the word superficial, but in fact, superficial is indeed that. It is focusing on a surface level, and surface is indeed very important. There's also things beyond the surface, and when one speaks about things beyond the surface, oftentimes that is a kind of a way of discussing the differences of things maybe within the surface that are not necessarily reflective of what we see on the surface. So I think we can say, or we can argue, or we can interpret, for instance, characters like Lux to be in that vein. So I like this interplay that Sofia Coppola and others, and Kirsten Dunst and others really are suggesting with a character like Lux. It's and focusing into on the idea of adulthood, or entering into adulthood, and the type of unknown, and the dangers, as well as the consequences of making those steps from adolescence into adulthood. So these are very, very important steps indeed, and they are expressed in the Lux story in a very powerful way. It's great to have this discussion here. And also the look of the film is very important too. So Ed Lachman, director of photography, and his contributions are mentioned here as well. And the idea of I like the phrase here, feminine portrait of entrapment. That is a very provocative phrase. And also the idea of different stocks, film stocks, used to try to portray different maybe tones and environmental and emotional states of mind, which I think is very key here. And also layers. There's this idea of layers in the look and the feel of the film that shows colors and environment in the 1970s, but also shows distance. This idea of a distance between the viewership and the subject matter, and the idea too of, because of that distance, maybe we know less than what it is we think we know. And that is, as I tried to mention earlier, maybe that's part of the point of watching this, what we understand and what we don't understand. The mystery of this world of the Virgin Suicide, the cruel, sad world, as it's mentioned here. And also the little details are very important. You know, this idea of the sandwich on the stairs, it's mentioned by a number of people, and it's little things that remind us of the slow, sad crawl that seems to be permeating the atmosphere. It's like a smoke or a haze. And also working with the artists, the fellow artists here, like working with actors like James Woods and Kathleen Turner, etc. And also the feel of the music and the atmosphere and the air and the look that they're trying to get with many of the characters like Trip Fontaine, etc. And also importance on performance. Again, going back to Kirsten Dunst, her performance here is electrifying. And there's a lot to do with how her character is showing emotion on screen through activity, but also through stillness. And sometimes that stillness is shown, like, say, in a shot of her in the car. just sitting in the car or something, and that stillness echoes throughout the film. And if you know the film, you know that there are key moments of activity, but there are also such critical key moments where characters are, for whatever reason, completely motionless. So this idea of stillness in the craft of Kirsten Dunst and her performance is really quite illuminating indeed. And then also talking about the soundtrack again, the importance of the soundtrack and the songs, and the nature of capturing the period and time. This is also mentioned here as well. And also some favorite scenes, iconic scenes. I think Ed Lockman mentioned the scene of Kathleen Turner, the mother, sitting on the bed. And there's a type of stillness and of pain and emotion, but also something of an acute awareness or lack of awareness, whatever the case may be. And also the sense of institution and religion. Because also this is part of the family dynamic, as we know. It may or may not have played a part in whatever it is happens, but in any event, these examples here and there are mentioned with great detail and great love and affection by the participants here. So this is a great one. Again, it's carried over from the earlier edition, but that's so great. That's okay, because it's still great. This is Revisiting the Virgin Suicides 2018, approximately 26 minutes. But that's not all, because then we have, again from 2018, Jeffrey Eugenides on the Virgin Suicides. This is approximately 15 minutes. And here we have Jeffrey Eugenides talking about the inspiration, the background and lead up to him writing the work that is the Virgin Suicides. And also his take on the film, the circumstances involving how this turned into a film, how he got into contact, or how Sofia Coppola contacted him, and what some of the similarities and differences might be between the written work and the screen adaptation, and how he reacts and responds to those differences. And he's very honest and very, very straight to the point, and I appreciate that and admire that. And he also acknowledges differences between the work, his writing, and the film, but he also acknowledges how those differences do play a very critical role in the success of the work. And also he acknowledges that the popularity of the film does help the popularity of his own work as well. And he has this great admiration for Sofia Coppola and what she she and company were able to do to adapt the work for the screen. And talking about some of the details too, about the inspiration for the title, the Virgin Suicides. There is this a type of double meaning as well, and I didn't quite realize this until I'd seen this discussion from Jeffrey Eugenides about how it has it's suggestive of say adolescence and sexuality on the one hand, but it also is as a reminder of the Virgin Mary and the connection with religion. That is very important in the context of the Lisbon family lives. And so it has a double meaning to it, and perhaps it has more meanings to it as well. But this is also a very provocative title, kind of almost controversial title in a manner of speaking. So this is, and also this idea of perspective and omniscience, or the limitations of omniscience, and how stories are told, and the point of view that is established here. And so things from a certain point of view in the film, it's the point of view of the boys, of course, but how this is also acknowledged as being very limited. And it has to be, because part of the way in which the story operates is realizing the things we don't know, and perhaps we will never know, about the Lisbon sisters. And so this is something that Jeffrey Eugenides acknowledges and points out, both in terms of the writing and the film. And I'm also talking about the inspiration of the film as well, in terms of a babysitter anecdote, and also talking about a type of detective story aspect, trying to put together the puzzle pieces of the past, etc. But then he also makes room in this great discussion to talk about his admiration for the sensibilities of the artist and filmmaker Sofia Coppola, and also that he was, being on set, but also seeing Sofia Coppola and the sensibilities of her approach on set as a very calming presence, but also very confident, knowing exactly what she wanted, and Also, there's a type of quiet nature, he describes it, to her presence on set, but it's never lacking in any type of authority or confidence, which I find very illuminating. And this is something that comes up in other comments as well, I think from Josh Hartnett, also from James Woods, etc. So, and also mentioning too the appearance of Michigan and how this is also very much part of Jeffrey Eugenides's own, say, outlook and biographical detail, a type of capturing a sense of the landscape that maybe is not there anymore, as well as the importance of music and soundtrack. Again, the emphasis on the music. This is one of the great strengths of the film. If you haven't had a chance to get the soundtracks, please do. They're so great. But so for these and other reasons, yes, we have another great conversation, again carried over from the earlier release, but that's okay because it's still great. That being the conversation with Jeffrey Eugenides on the Virgin Suicides from 2018, approximately 15 minutes. Next, we have a discussion with Tavi Yevinson, and this is approximately 13 minutes, again also from 2018, Strange Magic. And she is speaking about the film as a fan, as an admirer, as a great admirer of this work in terms of the writing and the film, and so much so that she speaks about her own childhood and background and growing up and making the zine, which was at the time almost like a fan magazine, a publication that she made basically by herself, and talking to about this type of approach to the work, approach to the writing and to the film, and how it was able to give her the opportunity then to attach and affix certain aspects of her own life and her own pictures and her like some kind of tangible living diary, in a manner of speaking. And also this was something that she used the work and her way of expressing how she felt about the work, this way of showing, expressing her own feelings of confusion, of isolation, as well as the beauty of discovery and the like. So this is a really fascinating discussion from someone who is a real great fan and admirer of the book and the film. And she also mentions a little bit how she discovered the book and her reaction to that, and also talking too about the experiences watching the film, her interactions, interviews with Sofia Coppola, and the idea of music and her reaction to the music and the like. So you can tell that this is a film that it's interesting to get this perspective, very fascinating to get this perspective as a type of contemporary perspective, contemporary meaning contemporary to the time that the film and the book were released respectively, but also contemporary in the sense that we have someone who is reacting to that is perhaps not wholly or that perhaps can herself recognize, and she does say this, to recognize certain aspects of the characters of the Lisbon sisters and the Lisbon family that she can relate to on one level or another. And so this type of reaction is really quite fascinating and very insightful. And so I'm very glad it's included here. So again, this is carried over from the earlier Blu-ray release, but it's nice to have here. This is the Tavi Yevinson discussion called Strange Magic. Again, approximately 13 minutes. And then that's not all, because then we have a 23-minute, almost another making of documentary behind the scenes. This is from Coppola, so the mother of Sofia Coppola. And this is credited 23 minutes approximately from the year 2000, according to the materials. And this is like a behind-the-scenes look at the making of the film on the set with the people as the film is being shot. We see Jeffrey Eugenides, we see Sofia Coppola, Kathleen Turner, Francis Ford Coppola, James Woods, Eleanor Coppola as well, Josh Hartnett, Scott Glenn, etc., Sofia Coppola as well. And they speak about it like a type of family affair in a great way. I love that too. There's a moment where Eleanor Coppola is talking about the hardships of watching her daughter work, because Sofia Coppola, as being the writer-director of this film, worked her heart out to make this film. And some days were just so tough physically and emotionally, and it was hard as a mother, she says, Eleanor Coppola says, to watch this, but it was also she had to admire the artistic spirit, which is something that is very much part of this family. It is a family that is very much a family of artists, including Francis Ford Coppola, who is mentioned there. And there's also an interesting discussion about the relationship, the artistic relationship between Francis Ford Coppola and Sofia Coppola in the context of the Virgin Suicides, and to what degree that was there, and also to what degree there was the sense of the independence of Sofia Coppola as an artist making choices as the writer-director of the Virgin Suicides. So this is very interesting. And also in terms of the family, there's a lovely anecdote from Scott Glenn, among others, about how he knew the family and Sofia from such a young age, and now, as he says now she's his boss, and so and he says that with such joy in his voice and in his face. So, and then just speaking, hearing the actors speak about working with Sofia Coppola, the atmosphere and other participants and other collaborators, Roman Coppola, Robert Schwartzman, Chris Neal, etc. And there's also mentioning here too film stock, which was mentioned earlier in another supplement from Ed Lockman, etc., etc. So here we have yet another kind of contemporary viewpoint on the making of this. Is very valuable stuff, and it reminds us of the warmth of the atmosphere and also the great philosophy and demeanor of the filmmaker artist extraordinaire that is Sofia Coppola. So please check this out if you can. This is Making of the Virgin Suicides. This is approximately 23 minutes. And then that's not all, because then we get, as I mentioned earlier, the short film, approximately 13 minutes, from 1998, according to the materials. This is Lick the Star, the short films from Sofia Coppola. And this is very important too, for a number of reasons. First, it is a really it's really quite an excellent short film. So absorbing. It has kind of dramatic turns and a mystery quality. It's also taking place in the context of a school setting, school life. Cliques, people you should be friends with, people you shouldn't be friends with, and that type of dynamic, and how it might change in an instant, and how being absent from school can totally upend one's own sense of self even, and that's so important in sort of school life and adolescence life and high school life and that sort of, or school life in general. So this is really great stuff in and of itself, and it's very effective, very clever, very witty, and also at the same time it serves as a type of reminder or precursor, not quite prequel, they're not in that way, but a type of spiritual precursor to what we will see in the Virgin Suicides but a year later. So wow, what a great indication of the mindset, the artistic mindset and approach and viewpoint of Sofia Coppola, and also just the power that she has in being able to tell this story, and also just seeing the connections that are there between Lick the Star and the Virgin Suicides. Oh, what a great inclusion. Again, we'd seen it before, but it's great to have it again. So Lick the Star, approximately 13 minutes. And then that's not all, because we have, I mentioned Playground Love and Air, because here we have the music video, and the 3-minute music video. I mean, the music, the song is so, it's so cool. If you're watching this video and you've seen the Virgin Suicides, chances are you already know Playground Love in and out. You've heard it many times on a loop, like I have growing up. Wow. And to get the music video again, it's always great to have. Very clever. There's this idea of the motif of gum, which I'm always reminded of every time I watch. It's very funny, very clever, and it's a great song. So Playground Love, the music video, the song by Air, it's also included here as well. And then we have a set of trailers to round out the supplements here. Again, we are reminded of how this was released already from the Criterion collection, but it's always great to have a reminder. So here it is again for 2022 for the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition, the supplements. Also, just to round it out, we have again Megan Abbott's essay, which we had seen before. They hadn't heard us calling, which is part of this fold out. The essay, the great essay, which is part of the fold out insert for the new 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo. And again, I should point out too that this is the fold out that we saw from the earlier Blu-ray release, which also has the Megan Abbott essay, and it has a similar look and feel. So we're getting. It's a great essay too. So once again, with these essays, watch the film first, and then after you've seen the film, read the essay. And the Megan Abbott essay, once again, it's called "They Hadn't Heard Us Calling." I've read it so many times, and I learn something new every time. It's really, really wonderful. So we are getting that continuity from the earlier Blu-ray release to this new current 2022 Blu-ray plus 4K UHD combo release as well. So for those who have the Blu-ray and maybe are already satisfied with the Blu-ray, maybe you don't need to get this new release. But for those who say are really into the 4K format, and or for those who don't have this yet but have been thinking about it, this is, I think, a great opportunity. Once again, the Blu-ray option, I think, is really great. The 4K UHD option is really great. So if you don't want to go for the 4K, you can still go for the Blu-ray edition, and you're still going to have a great time with this film. Ultimately, it is about the film. Ultimately, it is about the film. What a powerful, haunting film this is. I'm so glad that this has been re-released to remind us, to remind me, to remind everyone of that fact, and then some. This is the work from Sofia Coppola. That is The Virgin Suicides. Okay, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very, very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.